All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. I just want to welcome everyone to the webinar today. My name is Jenna Johnson, and I'm an academic trainer with the Center for Teaching and Learning. Today's session is titled Don't Procrastinate, Find Your Dissertation Topic, presented by NCU alumni, Dr. Angela Beck, who also happens to be our newest alumni navigator. I want to cover just a couple of housekeeping items before we begin. I am recording our time together, so this video will be posted on the Center for Teaching and Learning's LibGuides webinar page within 24 hours. So just give us 24 hours to get it processed and posted for you. If you do have any questions throughout today's session, go ahead and type them into the Q&A forum located at the bottom of the Zoom window. All of your questions are welcome, so don't be shy. And then we also have the chat feature open, and Emily Spranger, academic trainer, is going to be monitoring that for me. If you want everyone to see your chats, make sure you select everyone from the to box at the bottom of the chat. Now that that is all out of the way, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Beck.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. I think we're all in the afternoon time zone by now. I see that there's a lot of folks from all over the place, which is very exciting. And this is going to be one of those like free-flowing webinars. I thought about this for a minute, and the only thing I kept thinking is like, what would I wanted to know as I was moving throughout my courses to this like dissertation at the end, this culminating task, right? Like, what would I wanted to know ahead of time in order to get my little breadcrumbs in place so that I can do this dissertation with some level of, I don't want to say ease, but like with some, this lacking of fear and being able to really accomplish something large with putting things in place along the way. And I think that's so important. So I was like, I feel like, it's my responsibility as an alumnus to bring this to you guys and try to help you to navigate your way through this like dissertation, even though some of you may not be in that place at this time. So welcome, and we're going to get started. So I'm glad they asked you where you're from, which is kind of cool. I was looking and seeing people are all over the United States at this point. My other question to you is like, what degree are you pursuing? Like, for example, I was getting my doctorate in educational leadership. I would love to know what is your degree, and if you don't mind throwing that in the chat. Okay, psychology. Awesome. Okay, so I'm seeing a good bit of psychology, some education. I'm going to try to match this up as best as I can with what you're doing from my personal experiences. But, at any point, if you feel like there's not a match with what I'm discussing, maybe you can talk to your, I would say your chair if you're in that stage, or if you're taking some of the courses, you can maybe ask them where would some of these classes fall within your process. So agenda, I kind of threw in the kitchen sink with this presentation. So you can look on the side. I'm not a big reader of things. I feel like you're able to see the stuff on the screen, but I will point out some of the big things, which are obviously like discussing, picking out a topic, right? And then at the end, which the title does not lead to, it's a lot of like things that can hold you back with getting to your end result, which is formatting. I know I understand a lot of people get frustration with formatting with your papers and with table of contents or headers or your references. And so I'm going to do a little tutorial on those things as well. All right, this is actually when I was taking classes with NCU, this is my actual schedule. And so I pulled it. Why am I pulling the schedule? And again, if you are in psychology or other classes, I think everybody probably takes some similar classes. Like, I don't think you can get away with going through your doctorate degree without taking advanced scholarly writing, research methods. some of these other classes that, you know, are not elective classes, as you can see, like mine would be safety issues for educators, right? Like that maybe for psychology, you might not be taking that class, but insert something of yours. But I have to imagine that your course schedule has some of these core classes that are in this, right? Why is this important? If you are just starting out, let's just say you're in your like your first class, your foundational class, right? This is like a perfect time for you to start thinking about a dissertation topic. I know you're like, hey, I am like 14 classes away from this. I'm like 2 to 3 years away from like thinking about a dissertation. Not true. Not true at all. If I had a position where to make some kind of decision, like your advanced scholarly writing class. Now, don't panic if you're past some of these things right now. We will still help you, okay? But like idealistically picking out your topic, because that's where you really start looking into your research topics and gathering scholarly writing and all these things. You start doing it there. And so you don't really want to waste a minute of on your topic by not having something clearly determined. I would say last place that you probably want to, like, if you don't have that decision by your scholarly, advanced scholarly writing class, I would say a last like place would be a research methods class, because once you get past there, you're starting to get into these like quantitative or qualitative classes, which you're going to have to decide what kind of like research design are you doing with your dissertation, right? So you want to be kind of clear on what is at least your topic by then. Okay, so with this, and the picture on here is actually like if you order your little dissertation book. It's not mine, but that's what they look like when they come to you in the mail if you order them. So that's kind of cool. So some of the things that you need to make sure that like you're clear on. One is you have to be passionate about your topic. Don't do something just because you're an expert in it or you're familiar with it. You have to have passion. You're going to be living with this topic for a long time. Okay. The best thing is to kind of start like wide, right? Start broad, and you want to thin it out as you keep going through your classes, right? But if you're starting on a broad topic like parent participation, obviously there's multitudes of things that you could talk about with parent participation, but that's like too big of a topic. You can't come up with like, your dissertation has to be focused and centered, and we'll get to that in a second. But it's okay to start big picture, because as you move through your classes, your teachers and the classes will actually help you to thin it out, but you'll have some general research on hand, and you could start organizing your research, and we'll talk about that in a minute too. But I think that's important. It's just, you got to be passionate and think of something that is a big topic that you maybe want to discuss, right? For me, it was LGBTQ, and I'll show you how I went about this process in a second. Biggest thing, your professors are your biggest help. I know they give you a lot of feedback, and some days you're like, oh, come on, man, like, really? Did you really, like, knock me on that one little thing? But like, they're there because at the end of the day, this feedback is prepping you for later. And I would start asking your professors questions now on how can you, if you're having trouble narrowing that topic down, because it seems intuitive, but you kind of start getting like in your own way. I don't even know how else to say it. Oftentimes I feel like with dissertations, you're your biggest nightmare sometimes. And so in order to get over some roadblocks that may be in your way, your professors are that help. Then to you, Writing Center, the Commons, now there's navigators, right? Like they can help point you in the right direction, and get on your side to get you focused, right? Because that's the biggest thing. And again, as you move through your NCU courses, like like I said, that topic will keep developing. You might have in your mind in your advanced, scholarly writing course that we just talked about at the beginning, or your research methods, I'm definitely doing this. And I guarantee you, by the time you get to your quantitative or qualitative class, you're like, ooh, I'm going to switch it. I think I'm going to get more specific and go after this position of this topic. And again, the biggest thing I would say is like, please, please, please be very flexible, and listen to your NTU professors, because if not, I call it the washing machine you could get stuck in. I've seen people get stuck. I didn't get stuck in it, thank goodness, but I've seen people where they keep having to start over, or do something different because things aren't matching, and then they get frustrated. So listen to your professors all along the way, help them, let them help you through this process. It's the biggest advice I can give to you. Just to walk you through, to be honest, I made mistakes. And again, that's why I wanted to do this webinar. To be frank, I started out with a topic that I was very knowledgeable of. It was, again, I'm an education person, so I was doing something with educational leadership. And so I was like, oh, let me navigate, specifically the impact of like principals on their students, right? And I started off with this, and I'm like, I just wasn't feeling it. I like didn't want to look for all the scholarly writing, because I live it so much, right? So it wasn't anything new to me. And some people might be great with that. I'm not, dissuading you from like topics that are knowledgeable, but you've got to go after something passionate. So for me, I personally am LGBTQ identified. I have a partner. And I work in schools where this is a hard topic, honestly, for folks in schools. And I see a lot of students and teachers who are actually pro LGBTQ, but they just didn't know how to respond to students or deal with conflict and certain other things. But like with this topic selection, I had to deal with a lot of my own inner like issues, right? Like, okay, I have to come out to all my professors, right? I have to, this is going to be out there for the general public. Like, how do I feel about this? Like, how will my friends or my family who do accept me, but like it's on a larger scale now, like, how does this impact me as an individual, and then as someone that serves in a community, right? That maybe I'm not, everybody in the state that I live in doesn't know me, but if they picked up my paper, they could get a little sense of who I am, right? So that's another thing. Sometimes when you choose a topic you're so passionate about, it actually brings up stuff within you as well. And this is normal, please know that. But this is something too that could help you deal through some of these like conflicts, or like help you to grow personally, and then help you to advocate for things that may be injustices in the world, right? That's what the whole dissertation is about, is dealing with injustices. I like, again, not the biggest fan of change, but I had to switch gears. And I was like, God, I just lost like all these classes now with like finding scholarly work. But it's okay. Like, it's okay to make that change. Don't get stuck in something that you're not passionate about or you really don't want to write about. Make the change if you feel comfortable doing it. And trust me, it'll be a time saver anyway, because you'll be able to flow through the articles better and write, be able to put topics and subtopics together better with your mind if you're wanting to do that, right? So my dissertation topic, and I'm starting kind of backwards with the process for you, but I wanted you to see the topic that, like, the end result topic of what I had, which was LGBTQ Louisiana college students' perceptions of past elementary or high school teachers. I loved my topic. I had a great time with my research. It actually moved pretty quickly for me because like I was like wanting to find out what were the like college students' perceptions of their teachers. So I kept wanting to get to that research stage, which is chapter 4 of your chapter 4 of your dissertation. This was my problem statement. You're like, what does this have to do with your topic, right? You have to pick out a topic that actually you're trying to solve a problem around, right? So that is the biggest key. And if you're going with a topic, but you're like, I just don't know what is the problem. Like if there's no problem to solve, then you need to rethink your topic. And this is where you can really get stuck, is the problem statement. And when you get to your dissertation place, because this is the one thing, if you don't have these things firm in place, your problem statement, it's hard for you to formulate anything else. So you can see how this problem statement, which is founded in research, right? Because it needs to be something supported by research. And again, you'll learn a lot more about this in your classes, by the way. And you can see clearly what I did, a qualitative, right? So you can see it there. I did a descriptive case study. Again, if you don't know these things, you're going to learn in your classes. Do not panic. But you see how it ties, like is that LGBTQ students are often unsupported by their elementary or high school teachers, which can negatively impact their school experience, right? So this is the problem that I'm trying to solve. And as you can see, my topic, right, or my title to my dissertation, it matches my problem. So I want you to see how these things intertwine. Okay, they're not on their separate islands, they have to intertwine. And there's one more piece I'm going to show you. Again, this may be beyond where some of you are, but I want to put the picture together for you. Okay, next screen. This little gentleman, friend, good God, this is where I was like, when I was doing my dissertation, I was a little nervous I'd mess his name up. Now I'm messing it up for you. Bronfenbrenner's ecological systems theory. Your problem has to be based, and what you're doing your research on has to be based in a theory. Okay, so if you're picking a topic and a problem and you're like, there's no theory to match what I'm even thinking about in this world, that's going to cause you to have to juggle some things too. Why was this appropriate for mine? I can tell you, because this first part, the microsystem, his whole systems theory talks about children and how they are interacting with immediate environment, connections, indirect violence, social and cultural values, and how everything impacts the child, right? Or as you grow to the, young adult and so forth, right? I specifically, with this problem, just focused around that microsystem, immediate environment, and based everything out of that. So again, I'm going to flip back so you can see it all together. Okay, dissertation title. Okay, which is, LGBTQ Louisiana college students' perceptions of past elementary or high school teachers. Okay, my problem, which was often LGBTQ are not supported by their elementary or high school teachers, right? Which negatively impact their school experience, which ties to the microsystem, right? Their immediate environment, that if they're not seeing eye to eye with their teacher or feeling support or love or whatever in their immediate environment, that's going to negatively impact them. So you see how all three kind of marry together on this. Now there's more parts to your dissertation, but it's like these three, if these three things don't align, you may want to think about, narrowing that topic down, or maybe shifting a little, again, that flexibility, but again, talking to your professors about this. I'm going to stop here for any questions. I think this is a good stopping point.
Perfect, Dr. Beck. We do have a couple. Actually, I've seen a few in the chat and a few in the Q&A, and it seems like we have quite a few questions surrounding the approval process for the topic. Like, when do you have to get the topic approved? Like, where in the process? What kind of requirements are there?
Yeah, great question. So your topics, won't be officially approved until you start entering into those like dissertation phases, okay? Because you have, what you have to submit is like before you get into like the last couple of classes where you're doing your like chapter 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? There's a class, and let me go back to it. I'm just gonna flip screens so that we can look and see. So it's like this class right here before you start entering into like your dissertation, like 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Like before you enter that, this class right here is where they're going to give you some level of approval, okay? And this is specifically, I think, just on your chapter 1. And your chapter 1 is I can show you in a minute what it consists of, but it is like your problem statement, it's your purpose, it's the theory, right? It's some of the things that kind of outline your paper. So you're not going to get approval until then, to be honest. And when you start going into like 1 and 2, you have another place where like before you go to the IRB, like you're going to get your blessing from your professor, your chair and all of them, they call it your SME, your chair, like you'll get permission then to move on. So things may even change a little bit even after that doctoral comprehensive like assessment pre-candidacy prospectus class, right? Just know that it might shift a little, and it could shift even a little bit until even like your dissertation manuscript, like when you're ready, well, prior to that, but with your class 3, little words here and there could shift, but the overall major like components won't shift, if that makes sense. Especially after you've done your research, you really can't shift too much, but there might be a word or two that like you sharpen up. Sorry, that was a long-winded question, but
we appreciate it for sure. Can you skip, I think it's 2 slides. We've got some questions about the dissertation book.
Oh, yeah.
Some of the attendees, have never heard of it. Some of them wanted to know if it was your book.
That is not mine. Mine's in actually another room with my degree, but I ordered one. You can get it published at the end. I think it's through Procrastinate, that you submit your because you have to publish, right? And they do charge you for a hardbound. You can get the smaller one or the larger one. But that's what it kind of looks like. It's not mine though. Mine's in the other room. I did buy one though.
Perfect. Thank you. A little bit more in depth here. We've got a question about critical race theory, using it as long as it relates to their research. Their idea is critical race theory use among BAME children with learning disabilities.
So I'll say this. I'm not, what's the question? I'm trying to understand.
They're talking about critical race theory. I feel as though maybe they would want to speak with probably their current faculty member. That's kind of where I'm headed. I just didn't know. Are
they wanting to use the critical race theory as the theory behind the paper? Is that what they're asking? Like, how I'm using
yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, that's something that's a really good question. I don't know if that would match. I don't have all your information, if that makes sense. Biggest advice I can tell you is if that's a theory that matches with what you're doing, like talk to your professor about it. There could be, like I said, pieces or the whole thing that apply to what you're doing, and that's what you want to utilize for it. It's got to be, again, like obviously it's based in research, which that is, right? And supporting documents, you're going to pull a lot of things with this, like, your theory to tie to your paper itself. So that's great. I would say great, thinking of this ahead of time. And maybe that's something you could ask your professors to see if it actually would match with what specifically you're trying to accomplish. sorry I wasn't as much help on that one. I apologize.
No,
And
go ahead, Emily.
Jenna, if you don't mind, there's one in the chat that I wasn't able to copy paste you, but it was all the way up there. And this relates to how you talked about having things intertwined. How closely does my topic have to be related to my degree? For example, having an interest in organizational leadership, but degree in higher learning analytics, I assume somehow I need to tie the two. And I thought this was a good question because
I think this is, I don't know how it works with NCU specifically with what, your specific discipline, what it calls for you to do, right? Like, you have your classes that support your discipline. Mine specifically is in educational leadership, but as you can see, my topic is something not directly, I mean, it's leadership with a teacher per se of like how they handle kids, but it's not a principal and it's not a superintendent. It's not, like the school board, right? Like, so because this was something that, as a leader in my head, it's good to know, how to support teachers, right? That's how I pulled this. So, maybe if your topic links in that way, and again, I don't know that one either, unfortunately. I would again talk to your folks with them, but if you can link it like supporting of how this is going to help you be within leadership, right? Like, I think you can make that case just like I'm able to make my case for my topic.
We have a question about basically how long does it take to write the dissertation?
If I go back here, I'll show you where I was mental. I'm going to tell you right now. And you see how I had 2A and 2B, right? That class, you have chapter 2 and chapter 3 to write at one time. I wrote chapter 3 first. And because that chapter 2 is your literature review. Okay, that's the one that's like 30 pages of like specifically reviewing literature to your topic and organizing yourself in that manner. And I was in my head, and so for me, I could have done this if I wasn't in my head as much in those classes that you see there, 1, 2, 3, 4. I could have did it in 4 classes. I finished my doctorate in 3 years. I know that sounds crazy. Exactly 3 years. But I doubled up on some classes in the beginning. And, even with the stumble here that you see with me taking a second class, because I just didn't finish within the 12 weeks of time. I finished like that 2B class though. I dipped into it like 2 weeks, I think, of time. Like, I was almost there, but, and they let you, you start working on something else, right? Like even if you're in that class, you can start working ahead. So I think it just depends on you, how long, but if you're clear and you start writing, like I said, and start organizing yourself ahead of time, you could knock that out in those 4 classes, that dissertation. And to be honest.
Perfect. Thank you. We do have a question in regards to the comp course. It looks like somebody is just starting in the comp course and wants to know, how did you know you would have the participants for your study?
So interesting with this one. When I started doing my comp courses, this was pre-COVID. And in my head, I did a little research ahead of time. I kind of knew the university I wanted to use, right? But I made sure that I had access to what I needed, right? So I picked out a university specific that had active LGBTQ, like clubs and outreach and courses and things like that, to where I knew specifically folks would feel comfortable. So in my head at the time, I was like, cool, I'm going to set up a table. I'm going to make a connection with who's in charge of the outreaches for LGBTQ at that specific college. Like, this is going to be great. Cut to, I'm about to do my research in April. I'm going through the IRB process. Like, and as you know, like, COVID hit in March. That like rocked my world, because I could no longer go and recruit in person, right? So my whole plan just derailed. But what I can say is that the IRB, because you get, if you're using another college, for example, I had to get IRB approved through NCU and then their college as well. So it was a joint effort, but they were amazing, their IRB, and they helped me. They knew this was a hard time. And even though they were off campus and working in like not consistent times like they were because of COVID, they were able to like assist me to get through this process. So I would say, like, do your research and look for where you can get a good selection of folks, especially if you're doing something like me that was qualitative and it's very specific. So if you're doing something quantitative, you might be able to just use something like online, where you can recruit folks through just having them fill out your surveys online. That might be a different route, and using a company like Qualtrics, for example, right? Like, that's something that you may want to think about, is like, okay, what kind of, like, if I think I'm gonna have a hard time finding folks, is it better for me to do some kind of quantitative versus qualitative? Because then I can use some surveys and things like that and put it out to the ethers, right? Those are all things you need to think about, I would say, in advance. And again, work with your professors, because my topic really did not lend to a quantitative. It's very qualitative. So even if I wanted to make it quantitative, it just really didn't go with what I was trying to accomplish. All right, I'm going to move on and then we can catch some more questions because there's a few more things. So the biggest thing I would say is, like, make sure you're organizing your topics and subtopics. So, and I'll show you a couple of examples for mine, towards the end. But especially when you're writing that literature review, this is where the organization honestly needs to happen. It is chapter 2 all day long. And my professor gave me the best advice. She said, think of this like you're writing 3 10-page papers within your chapter 2 for your, literature review. And until she told me that, that's when I was in my head, right? And I was like, I don't know, I can't do this. This is so hard. And she was like, 3 10-page papers, like, and have some subtopics in there. You can make it. And it changed my life, to be honest. I'm not a, sticky note person. I feel like those get lost. I'm more of a, like, write it down and, kind of just sketch out a little bit. I'm not a big note taker. I'd rather get writing than making too much of an outline, but that's just me. Some of you might be outline folks. I would start thinking about those things now. And when you think about chapter 2, how can I break it down to manageable sizes for myself to where I can hit everything to prove that my topic's relevant? There is a problem, right? There is this problem that, like, LGBTQ were being, had possible negative experiences at school, right? Like, what supports that? So that's a big thing I wanted to mention to you. As you're going through your classes and reading all this material, start to think about how this fits in your chapter 2. If you have not downloaded, I can't stress to you enough, 2 things, and there's different things out there. I mean, RefWorks, I use RefWorks. This is the only, like, everything, I had it up on my toolbar or whatever. If I went to the library, Roadrunner, I would just import it to my RefWorks. Scholarly articles, because trust me, you're going to need to dip into those pretty often. You can make folders in there if that's how you want to organize. You're going to want to think about who's saying the same things. Which papers am I reading that they're saying like things, okay, for my topic? Let me start putting them in a folder because I'm going to need to pull these later for my literature review, okay? So you're going to want to start organizing yourself, keeping your scholarly articles, because what I found too, sometimes I would go back into the Roadrunner, or I would go pull it from some ProQuest or wherever, and it was like no longer available for some reason, like because the companies pay for these articles at certain times. So I sometimes would download a copy too, just to make sure I had it, right, to be able to reference. Very important. The Grammarly, it's just like anything, it's going to help you with your writing, right? But it's not perfect. If you misspell there, THEIR for THERE, it might not catch that, right? Grammarly, I would say another one, you want to download this for your writing to catch some of those simple mistakes that, you may need an apostrophe somewhere, or you put a period where you should have put a comma. Like, I would say download these two things, and I purposely put their screenshots so you could see their links on the screen, if you refer to this later. Dissertation bootcamp. I wish I would have went to this earlier. And not everybody, I know, like, finances are tough, like, trust me. Fortunately, like for my situation, we had some grants and things like that. I was able to go because of that. So I do understand it. If you do have the means, if there's a way for you to go to boot camp, I strongly suggest you do that. This is where they can give you some time, and with like professors to look over those topics and things that you're talking about, that you're like, hey, how can I get some kind of confirmation ahead of time? These folks can do that. I'm not saying it'll remain permanent, but they can help you with this. Okay. So again, I don't remember the price. It is a little change. Like, it's not, like $5 to go to this, right? You got to plan, and there's hotels and getting there, right? But it's worth it. I will say that. I'm going to go through this, and then I'll take more questions, because this is where people get frustrated and they want to just like slam their head against the wall. It's formatting your dissertation or your papers in general. The most common where I heard people just like, this is a struggle, because you literally will use, I'm going to skip to this really fast. There's a dissertation template in the NTU. I think there's an academic success center. There's a place where you can go and grab your dissertation template. If you haven't pulled that off of that site, I would strongly suggest you go do that. They update them though, so the one you pull, let's just say in your year one, may not be the same look of one for year 3, okay? But at least you start to understand the concept. This is what I was starting to tell you. They start, like, it tells you what needs to be in chapter 1, right? So chapter 1, which is what I was talking about in that class before you get into like 1A, 2A, 3A, 4A, the last 4 classes, the one that's like gets you over the hump to your dissertation, you have to do your like chapter 1, okay? Or some semblance of a chapter 1. And in this, you have your statement of the problem, purpose of the study, your theoretical or conceptual framework, your nature of the study, research questions, hypotheses. That's if you're doing a quantitative. Significance of study, definition of key terms, and summary, right? This is like the crux. If you can't get this like in good shape, you cannot move on to the other things. And that's why I was saying, like, the statement of the problem, honestly, you have to be clear about that in order to know what you're working on, okay? So to flip back, one thing, I had a professor, it was one of my elective classes, and I know my reference page was formatted correctly. But here's what I did. I pushed tab, I pushed spacebar, 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 enter, and he wrote me a note. He's like, this isn't done right. And I was like, what do you mean? I know for a fact it's done right. I counted all the spaces, and so I actually called him and I said, hey, can you help me with this? I'm not sure what you're referring to. He said, you need to make sure every single time you're doing your reference, it's done. So you're not having to enter space. I shouldn't see any of that in the background. Okay. When you can look at it, there's different views where you can see characters and how far people move over. This is when you're doing your reference page. This is the exact, like what it needs to look like when you can right click, and this is your paragraph. Okay. When you get to the reference page, this is what it needs to look. You need a hanging as your special. Okay. You need to click that. It's not going to be designed that way. You have to make it a hanging. Okay. Make sure you have multiple space. And after each one, when you push enter, it automatically spaces 12 points. Okay. That'll give you that one space right after. But it will set this up for you. You will not have to space. You will not have to enter. You will not have to indent. So I wanted to include this on here so you can get to this through your paragraph. All you got to do is right click on your mouse and, highlight, and you can make sure that this is being formatted that way. This will cause you lots of headaches in the long run if you don't get this right, because you're constantly adding on your dissertation new references that you got to put them all in alphabetical order too. So it can be a pain if you don't do it this way. I'm telling you now. Table of contents. I've seen this where people just throw their hands up because it ruins your whole paper. They give you in the template a table of contents. This is not complete. Please understand, this is not a complete table of contents because you have things that you need to add into it. Okay. And you're not going to be able to go in, contrary to popular belief, and delete all this and put a page, like put a bunch of periods in a page one, right? I've tried to do that because I didn't understand how the table of contents works. And I was like, wow, this just really messed up my whole paper to where I had to copy it and put it into a new template. It was bad. So let me show you how this works. Okay. This is, if you notice on your Word header, so I took, one of my old papers, and you can see here that this is your heading 1, okay, that you're seeing. You see it's APA formatted. It's in your toolbar, okay, for Word. If not, you need to make sure it's there. Click on that and you highlight this. Now, when you do that, it might unbold your title. So like you need to bold it back, okay? But when you do that, you're going to get this little character next to, it's a little like triangle looking thing next to that. Chapter 1 introduction. Okay. When you highlight and click there on that heading 1, and it will pop in as heading 1 that you're seeing here. Okay. You see how this one's all the way to the left, as far, left justified as possible, right? And you see that it's hooked to page 1. Okay. Next is a level 2 header. So your statement of problem is what would be considered a level 2 header. It's left justified, it's bolded. Those are all important things, why I'm telling you. And again, it's going to pop into here, but you see how it's indented slightly, okay? So your statement of problem, purpose, all these are level 2 headers. Now, what you don't see in here right now is a level 3 header. And I'm going to show you how to do this. So you see how school safety is not left justified to the paper. Okay, it's bolded. This is one of my subtopics that I was talking about in chapter 2. But I need to link this now to my table of contents because this is something kind of important. So how do I do that? Again, I'm going to highlight and I'm going to do it as a level 3 header. What happens then is that now you're seeing that school safety is popping into your table of contents. as a level 3. The other thing that you're not seeing here, and I couldn't get it to screen shoot, when you update your table of contents, when you click here, you could just click here. There's a way to update your table of contents. And you want to make sure you're doing that so your pages align. It will do that for you as you link things to your table of contents. So you don't have to come in here and start shifting pages by finger, you know, like by hand, right? Use the character within your table. There's a word up in your toolbar, and I can go show you where it is. But it's table of contents, and it'll like let you refresh your table of contents. That's what I'm trying to say. I'm going to take some questions, and then if we have even time, which I'm not sure, I can show you live on a Word document how to do some of this, just to make sure you're clear on these moves with your paper.
Okay, perfect. I'm just trying to get back to some of the ones, so hopefully I don't duplicate anything, but we have somebody who's in the STEM field, data science, has a broad topic, but is basically looking to track judges' sentencings in North Carolina and the impact on minorities. How did you go about collecting your data or getting approval to access the data?
Yeah, so I knew if I actually used high school or, you know, elementary kids, right, there's a lot of approvals that go with this. So oddly enough, I was struggling with this concept because I was like, I need to get their ideas of what's actually happening. And I actually, my peer reviewer was from the GLAD organization, which I met the CEO of GLAD. She was amazing. And I worked with a gentleman from GLAD, and he was like, well, why don't you just use college students? He's like, they're fresh from the school, you know, from high school. They probably remember if something went awry, you know, like, and then they're over 18, so you don't need that special permission, right? So that's something you need to think about, because if you want to turn this thing around quickly, you need to use folks who are over the age of 18, I would say, in my opinion. But not to dissuade you from using minors, it's just it might take you a little longer. You got to get permission from parents and from the schools and or wherever you're working on, right? If you're using minors. And there's a lot of stuff with IRB when you're dealing with minors, because the whole purpose is do no harm, right? You don't want people to get harmed through this process. So that's another big thing too. You have to think about that. But that's how I made my decision, was to go with adult, you know, people over the age of 18, because they could select if they want to participate.
Actually, I have a great question here. It says, when did you write your conceptual framework?
So that fell into, that's in chapter 1. You need to start thinking about that, right? So it's like almost I have to pull up to some degree a paper, do that for myself to refresh my brain. So you elaborate on some of these things a little bit later. So for me, mine was the theoretical part, obviously, right? But that is in chapter 1, and you have to have this kind of developed to some degree by then. You're going to add to it as you go, and as your professors, but you know, that class before you start to enter your dissertation. But like, I kind of figured out my who I was going to use, my theorists, like a little bit earlier than that, because again, you need to make sure all these things kind of align together, right? And that this theorist supports your work. So the writing piece, I did it probably when it was like the time to write, but the pre-thinking that I did happened beforehand.
Beautiful. Thank you. Again, I just want to make sure I'm not having any duplicates here. How and to what extent did your research design or prospective data collection influence your topic focus?
So my topic, I decided first before obviously how I was going to collect the data, right? I knew I settled on, and this again, this was me. I settled on like I really, because I do work in schools, and I see teachers that struggle with, just how do I've often heard, how do I handle this situation? How do I respond? What are parents going to say? What are administrators going to say if I like either support or don't say anything about, a kid that might be struggling with their sexuality or their choice of a partner in life or their gender for any matter. And it came based out of that, to be honest. I, I then decided like I wanted it to be something that actually could help, the folks I work with in everyday life. Like what I would learn from it, I could actually apply in my job position. And so that's kind of how I chose. For me, I wanted it to be purposeful. You know.
Now, Dr. Beck, did you say that you had anything else that you wanted to go through?
I can really quick.
I want to make sure that we get to that so we get everything.
Yeah.
Okay.
So let me do another share screen because I just wanted to be able to show you like the template. This is like one of the, like, just, this is not my full dissertation, obviously. I didn't want to, freak y'all out with it, but I wanted to keep some of the main components of what you like the template looks like to some degree, right? So you're seeing what's involved in every chapter. Again, chapter 2 is about 30 pages. I saw that there were questions, how long was my dissertation? It was probably around 70 something pages, maybe. Because your chapter 1 is going to be a couple of pages. Your chapter 2 is like 30. Your chapter 3 is got some meat to it too. You're going to have some pages with that. Your findings, again, that's determined on, what did you find, right? Like your length there. And then the implications, your recommendations for practice. Again, some of this is going to be some pages, right? Your meat of what I would say your longest, obviously, is chapter 2. But the other things dictate kind of what you do. So like your materials or instruments, your population, the sample. I think those, how much writing you do is dictated by what you select, I guess, per se. But just so you're aware, I wanted to show this. So if I click here, sorry, I hope you see this. There's a place where it says update field, and this will update your table of contents. You see how it's shifted that for me? To some degree, like you saw the pages shift, because that will align exactly to where things are. Let me try to move this toolbar out of my way so that I can show you where the table of contents is in your toolbar. So when you click on references, this is where your table of contents is. And you can update your table here. You can add text as well if you need to. So this is something that's kind of important. And then on your home screen, here again is where your styles are. This is where your headers, your headers are found. So you see how you can shift through and pick out the header that you need. Okay. And then again, let's just say I want to make, let me find something. Let's just say I want to make this academic program. Let's say I want to make it a header 4, for example, right? I make it a header 4. And when I go to my table of contents, and I update fields, you should see it. Ready to go. I'm looking for it. It should be here. Maybe I didn't highlight it properly. But you get the drift of what I'm trying to say. That's how you need to do it. You highlight and you make sure that it is, that header is linked to whatever you're trying to put into your table of contents. So I apologize if that didn't do it right. Sorry. I don't know why it's not doing it, but anyway, so I don't know. I'm like stalling at this point. Are there other questions?
Actually, we did have two. We have one that wanted to know how long your dissertation was.
Mm-hmm.
And then another wanted to know how long your defense was.
So the dissertation, if I had to, I mean, without reference pages, probably about, like I said, like 70, 80 pages. I don't recall offhand. With references, it's probably in the 100, because you have so many references at the end. The defense, I think they usually schedule you about like an hour, maybe. Because you have to so you think everything's done when you turn in your manuscript, right? No, it's not done. You have a PowerPoint to do. And your PowerPoint is what you bring to the table at your defense. And you discuss your problem statement, things you've learned, like there's a whole format and template that's also on NCU's website as well. You can pull that PowerPoint to start to see, but you discuss all these things, and that is what your defense supports your defense. And then you have your SHME and your chair, and you know, there's one more person I'm spazzing, but like they're there and they're asking you questions, like your subject matter experts, they're asking you a lot of questions, your chair, on the work that you've done. And that's what your defense is once you've presented your PowerPoint to them.
Okay, we are just about at the end here. I know that we have some questions that haven't been answered. Definitely feel free to go to the CTL LibGuides. You can do a chat, you can talk to the navigators. So don't think that you were ignored. We just don't have enough time to get it all done. So visit the CTL, you can ask a question there. I do want to thank Dr. Beck for taking the time to present. We had a lot of great questions. And just remember, the recording is going to be in the Center for Teaching and Learning's LibGuide page for the webinars within 24 hours. So thank you, everyone.